Hello, folks. Today is July 21st. This is a release engineering subproject of SIG Release. This is a meeting that is recorded and available on the internet, so please be mindful of what you say and do. Please be sure to adhere to the Kubernetes code of conduct, and overall, just be awesome people. So we had a great discussion yesterday in the 119 release team meeting, or one of the 119 release team meetings, and I thought, what a great idea to say exactly all of the things that we said there. Um, a lot of the content was release engineering related, and some of the topics that we got into were overlapped uh, with a kind of wider release engineering efforts as opposed to just 119. So I figured it would be good to rehash that stuff here. You'll see that I've copied in notes from from yesterday's meeting. We will clean those notes up as we go. If anyone is interested in acting as a note taker, that would be greatly appreciated. And if anyone has topics that they want to add, feel free to slot them in ahead of any of these things that are listed already. So first off, the RC2, which is planned for today. Do we want to get a status check on the RC2? We've got, I see Daniel and Sasha here.
Yeah, it would be really helpful. I think so.
Okay. All right,
Yeah, there's
so
a thread right now going in release management about some of those issues that Liggett brought up yesterday. But I don't think that those are intended to block RC2. It looks like Tim mentioned this also, that was more about reopening master.
Exactly, right. So so there were several issues that were brought up yesterday, and a lot of them are related to if anyone was checking out our kind of CI posture over the last week or so, you would have noticed quite a few failures across a variety of different areas. Some in Windows. There were the GPU plugin tests, which were kind of like perma fails. I think some of the other end-to-end tests and the node end-to-end test was showing about a 5% flake rate as well. So what we usually try to do during today is a day where we are doing a few things, or there are a few milestones that we're hitting, and they're kind of bundled up into the same thing, right? One is the RC2 itself. The RC2 is also supposed to, newly in the cycle, will mark the start of our code thaw, right? There's not really a start of it, it just is. But we, during that meeting, we kind of looked around and said, this is fairly bad. Maybe we don't immediately open. So for code thaw, for those who are not familiar with code thaw basically says like, hey, we're just about wrapping up this cycle, and we feel comfortable with reopening the master branch for development again for the next cycle. What we are saying overall is that we are not ready to do that just yet. There's some various flakes that we want to burn down, and as well as so some of those are infrastructure level, some of those are code level. Some of the PRs within the milestone are not necessarily PRs that we want to continue being in the milestone. So this will give us an opportunity to kind of gut check the milestone. I think there were maybe 50 or so items left last I checked, at least. I have clever people on the case. Dan, do you want to give an update maybe on CI Signal?
Yeah, so you mentioned a couple of things there that we're having issues with. Most of them are resolved at this point. So the first thing you mentioned, I think, was the device plugin issue. That one was kind of weird. And actually, if you tune into Virtual Summit China, I will walk through how we fixed it. So we recorded that yesterday. But anyway, that was just pulling a manifest from another repo. So that is up to date and has passed consistently. So we're good there. The other flakes for Node Kubelet Master, which you mentioned, those are not resolved right now. And it's kind of been that way for a while, unfortunately. That's the mirror pod with grace period issue. However, like it's not a new thing, but it has increased in the consistency of the flaking, and that's the same story with the scalability test. And Liggett mentioned yesterday, basically the scheduling throughput has been consistently falling. So there's a gate for 90%, and it was like would flake every once in a while around like 89 or something like that. And now we're getting some results that are more like 80 and that sort of thing. So like I said, all these things are not new. So in terms of like cutting a new release, I'm hesitant to do anything that would block those, especially since they're just flaking. But they do need to be addressed. So I think that's kind of where we sit right now.
Thank you. So yeah, one of the decisions that we had made yesterday, and I think this was off the call and probably scattered between chats with the various leads, is that we can, my words, maybe not exactly what we're going to do, but we can cut an infinite amount of RCs if we needed to, right? And I think the RCs give us an opportunity to actually test the content and give the people who actually consume RCs the opportunity to test that content. So we don't think it's a good idea to necessarily delay the release, but we do think it's a good idea to delay the start of code thaw, or the reopen of the master branch. So there's going to be a note that is sent out later today by Taylor that will give some details about where we currently stand, and basically reiterate some of the stuff that we mentioned just now. Hey, Jordan, do you want to chime in? We're essentially doing a rehash of the meeting you were in yesterday. So we're talking about the flakes right now and what we are and aren't going to do for today. So
let me get oriented. So it looks like several of the things from yesterday did merge, which is great. Too many windows, sorry. So there's one panic fix that is still making its way through the merge queue. The scale issue has not gotten any comments from SIG scheduling or SIG scalability. Are those the two that were left?
Those were the two big ones, yeah.
Okay. The panic issue is less critical because it typically, I mean, it's going to return an error there anyway for the test. So, I mean, I think it would be good to get that in, but it's not.
Oh, is that a test-only issue?
Yes.
Oh.
So yeah, that's less critical.
Never mind. I missed that was the test issue. Okay, so yeah, so the kubelet, or the node E2E that was failing on the mirror pod test, Seth, I think, has a proposed fix for that. He and I were about to jump onto a call when I got tagged in here. So if that fix is legitimate, then I think we'll be good to go like by midday or late afternoon, like once that merges.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would like SIG scheduling and SIG scalability to at least weigh in on on their issue. I don't know that needs to block RC2. So, yeah.
Yeah. So what I was mentioning in the right before you joined is that the upside is that there are two discrete actions. Doing the RC doesn't necessarily mean that we need to. Doing the RC doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to do code thaw, though that's something that we would usually do. So we are going to go forward with the RC and continue to watch master about where we stand for code thaw. But I would say but I would say more importantly, if you've got to jump to work on a fix for one of these things, I would say go for it.
I would move the one that Seth is working on down to the like release blocking and master reopening blocking for now, just because based on his investigation, it is an issue that did exist before and this new test exposed.
Oh, nice.
So yay for tests, and it makes me sad when I find out we had bugs for a long time.
Okay,
so
and that's the mirror pod?
Yeah, the mirror pod.
Okay.
Okay, so yeah, the big one was the performance issues and the tracing panic and the fact that it didn't work at all on Windows. So all three of those have merged. So once we fast forward to whatever's in master, cutting RC2 seems reasonable at this point.
Okay. Let's see. Okay, so let me check the content, or actually release managers, if you want to check the content. I know we did a fast forward earlier, and we'll want to check that. Okay, that was at 6:35. So let's just check the dates and times and make sure that these fixes are actually in the 119 branch.
And I just updated the list of issues and pull requests categorized into RC2 blocking things and master reopen blocking things.
Okay, cool.
And I linked to that. So.
All right, and I will.
All right, I'm going to jump over the call to Seth and try to get that mirror pod issue nailed down.
Cool. Thanks a lot, Jordan. Take it easy. All right. Okay, so let's just see. Okay, he's got this updated. I am dragging this into our list on this call. Okay. Done. All right. So any questions on that stuff? All right. So we'll be watching that throughout the day. Daniel and Sasha, if you can poke around and make sure that the content that we need is in the 119 branch, and if not, we'll plan to do another fast forward to get us there. So one of the things that Jordan had mentioned, scalability, scheduling, and this is something that I had mentioned yesterday. Communication-wise, so one thing I was worried about and have confirmed just now is that the scalability ping groups on GitHub, API review, bugs, feature requests, miscellaneous PR reviews, proposals, and test failures, those are all pretty stale. So I'm going to update those later, probably right after this call, to include the current tech leads and chairs for SIG scalability, and then for some of those ping groups, I'm going to consolidate some of these. Like some of these have Joe Beta on it, and he's definitely not doing scalability reviews right now. So I'll get these updated, and what I'll do is I'll also include. So we're moving to kind of a not new system, but consolidated teams for GitHub. So the expectation is that we would see at a bare minimum a team that is SIG's name, a team that is a SIG's leads, and then a team for PR reviews. So it would be like SIG release, PR reviews, SIG release, and SIG release leads, right? So I'll move scalability to that format. For those teams, I'll also add the release team leads, or rather the SIG release leads overall, right? So, and then maybe someone from CI Signal to get that overlap. So I think that at the very least, if people are pinging SIG scalability, it will get to both them and us, which I think would be good for noting some of the scalability things that are going on throughout the cycle. So any questions on that?
I guess that's step one in what we talked about yesterday and coming up with a more comprehensive one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay. I added the note to the agenda under SIG scalability that's an action item for you.
Where did you?
I'll highlight here. I can put it here as it relates to them, but isn't.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Cool. All right, so I'll drop my note. Cool. All right, so next up is the VDF. The VDF is in progress. For those who are not familiar, VDF is Vanity Domain Flip. It is when we will change the backing container registry of kates.gcr.io from Google owned to community owned. So if you're familiar with gcr.io/Google containers, that is where most of, if not all, of the prod community images are hosted. Moving forward, that will be Kate's Artifacts prod and the various geolocated endpoints. So us.gcr/Kate's Artifacts prod, EU.gcr.io, and Asia.gcr.io Kate's Artifacts prod. So that, based on the feedback I got yesterday from Linus, is going well. And it is something that carries over the course of 4 days or so as it hits the various geolocated endpoints. So we are in a good spot to do that. I also tested the promotion process. So release managers who are cutting releases moving forward, you'll have to make sure that after the mock stage and mock release, we're issuing a promotion PR for the mock release, the container images that are pushed as a result of the mock release, to carry them into production, right? So that PR would be approved by a release manager and then promoted into production. So that should not, when you issue one of those PRs, make sure that you open the PR, you add a hold to it, and you don't release that hold until right as we're successful with the official release, right? So it should be mock stage, success, mock release, success, create the promotion PR, hold the promotion PR, start the official stage, start the official release, and then as the official release is completing, we're releasing the promotion PR. So tiny bit of gymnastics to be aware of, but I think it's minimal in the overall process. I linked a kind of demo example PR for how to do that, and that should be linked to somewhere. I can dig it up if it's not. So questions on that? Okay, great news. So, time for my favorite topic in all the world. Go. Go updates. So we've been doing a lot of Go updates recently. If you've been watching the streams, we are at Go 114. So the first ones that we did as the cycle was going on was to Go 114.4 for the master branch. Then we moved quickly into Go 114.5. Recently updated to Go 114.6. And for the release branches, we were on for the previous release branches, so 118, 117, and 116, we were on Go 113.9, and we are now on Go 113.14. So I think that throughout this quarter or so, we've kind of proven that it is possible for us to kind of crank out Go releases fairly quickly, depending on the complexity of the release. Let me not jinx us for the rest of Go release history. But I think that we're starting to tighten the way that we do the Go updates. I had recorded maybe 3 hours or so of content on how to do some of this stuff, which covers the patch release, kind of the Go patch release updates, but not the minor updates. Minor updates get kind of sticky depending on the various issues that you might run into. And I'm wondering how much people are interested in actually seeing what I was working on yesterday, last night. Later, Taylor. It is the update for, I think it's something that we haven't done quite yet, which is an update for Go 115.0. So the part that we haven't done yet is try to update to a version of Go that doesn't exist yet. So we were working with a pre-release version of Go, and you know what, I don't really think it's showing off because it's not done yet, but I will go into this PR just a little bit. So let me stop my Slack. All right. So what did we do here? At first, there are some interesting things going on. And I think we can stop there. So, okay. So first one up, there's kind of some version swizzling that you need to do within the build directory, the dependencies.yaml. Because we're trying to consume a pre-release, some of these version numbers that we are depending on, they're slightly different, and they don't necessarily respect the same regex match patterns that we were using before. So one example is this, where the Golang upstream container image is actually it's not 115.0 dash beta.1. It's 115 beta 1. So we need to account for that. And then the cube cross image is also has what would be the semver expected string -1. There's a repo infra configuration here that we have to set. So I initially had that set to the semver compliant version, some swizzling of the test images makefile, and then referencing the new cube cross version for under test. Then we can see that this starts to go off the rails. The Go version is updated to, this is one of the two, minus a little bit of stuff. This is one of the two accepted regexes for semver, and you can see that that is a bit long. I did not come up with this. This was already listed in the semver and semver.org close to the bottom. So you can feel free to use that if you ever need to capture something that is semver compliant. And then we do some more stuff. Because the Go version that they're targeting, or that they've listed, is not quite semver. There is a slightly different regex. This one I did do, which targets 115 beta 1, right? Or matches for 115 beta 1, right? So that is kind of the boring stuff. This next one is where it goes off the rails. Here we remove the dependency checker. We comment out the dependency version check for repo infra. And then we also comment out where we're pulling in repo infra from, right? So it's basically saying like, this is an HTTP archive. I want you to use this version of repo infra 008. And this is the expected SHA of that tarball. And then, you know, once you untar that, I want you to strip this prefix from the tarball, right? So we did something a little different here, which is over to a different PR, right? So repo infra contains a variety of things, but one of the primary things that it contains is a bunch of the rules that we define for Go. So what's cool about it is you are then able to define your rules, define the rules that you care about in repo infra, and then ingest them in your repo by loading the repository through various mechanisms, right? So the one that you saw, which is, I'm lost now, okay. The one that you saw was an HTTP archive, but we can also do it via Git repository. So you can see here, I'm instead opting to use the Git repository mechanism, right? And I'm naming it the same as we would for the HTTP archive IO Kates. So it's essentially like flipping the repo name, right? So the endpoint is kates.io, and then the repo name is repo infra, right? So that's it represented in baselese, if you will. So here we're naming it the same thing, but we're pointing it at my remote, right? And we're pointing it at a specific commit. So the reason I'm doing that is because within that commit is some dark magic that I learned through previous journeys. And that is here, right? So we don't have a representation of pre-release versions, so we have to directly point at tarballs for those pre-release versions, right? So you can see here that we're adding this Golang SDK to the deps load, loading that deps.basals, and defining a set of SDKs, right, for all of the various architectures. And these are possible to get if you just do, so being that we could be doing this more than infrequently, I might need to have a simpler way of generating these outside of going to this page. But you can see that per architecture, we've got the file name as well as the SHA-256 for that file. So I basically just copied these in to here, and that's that, right? I did a quick. This is just an update Bazel hack, update Bazel. And that just cleaned up my mistakes of missing the comma at the end of these lists. And yeah, right. So at that point, the this PR has a means of understanding where to look for the Go SDK when it's trying to do Go related things, right? So then it started to go bad. I tried a few different things. It appears that there may be an issue with the rules that we may not be able to fix just yet, because we're trying something new. It looks like it's new enough that we're running into an issue that does not have a solution just yet on the Gazelle side. So Gazelle, okay, so we've got a response from Jay Conrad, who is one of the people who works on various Bazel things. So Gazelle, and I think he also works on rules_go, and probably somewhere around Go proper, around Bazel proper. So I'm going to look into what he said and see if I can clean up some things here. But it looks like there are 2 active issues that are open right now. Slinker conflict when external tests. Basically, it says that we've compiled from some place, but we've linked from someplace different, and the places that are this tends to happen when it's for external some external component. So in this case, the external component would be, I think where we're seeing a lot of the errors is the staging directories. So if you're familiar with staging, some weird things happen. The way it's built, kind of weird things happen, and we have a set of scripts to make sure that we can update the Go mod and Go sums and various places in the staging directory. And yeah, so I had played around with a bunch of different things, like updating the various tools. So this one basically bumped repo infra to the latest version, and then bumped. I basically dropped the deps from here, only bumped repo infra, and then reran a make deps within that directory, which pulled in the repo infra versions of these tools, the versions of these tools that are compatible with repo infra, rather. So that did not work. And so afterwards, I ran an update vendor to see what it would fix. So update vendor also updates update Bazel, also runs update Bazel. So you'll see like a few build file fixes that will come in as a result of that. We can see that we got double slashes on these conformance tags. And then I tried it again, but this time I bumped the Git repository that we're referencing. So I referenced a new SHA on my repo infra PR, or my repo infra branch. And then I tried running that update vendor again. And we can see that it pulled in some references for new platforms, AIX and JS. But overall, those are not useful to us and don't fix errors like this, right? So this is what we were seeing, right? So it says yada, yada, yada was compiled with Go default library, but was linked with Go default test. This happens when an external test package ending in _test imports a package that imports the library being tested. This is not supported. And we can see that there are a variety of these errors throughout these failing tests. So the current status is that some of these things are passing, right? We've got some end-to-end tests passing, dependency checks passing, files remake, node end-to-end is passing. But the ones that I would watch to see if they were failing during a Go update would be, I want to make sure that Bazel build and test are good. I want to make sure that the cross looks good. I want to make sure that the primary ED for GC looks good. And of course, the integration and verify tests. So we've got a bit to go. We've got time to do this, and I think it's good that we're starting early. The goal overall, because of some hairy issues in Go 114, is to move to Go 115 across all release branches. So we want to vet that this looks good for the for master branch in 119 before starting to carry this into the various release branches. So we obviously don't want to do that until there is an actual version of Go to test against. But this PR is meant to get some soak, get some signal before we ingest the final version of Go 115, or the first minor version, or rather, yeah, the first minor version, first patch version. Yes, the minor version, which is also technically the first patch of Go 115. I should just say Go 115.0 is what we're waiting for, and that should be available sometime in early August. So we've got about 2 weeks and change to figure out some of the things that are going on, hopefully knock them down before we get the full version of Go. And then it will be a race to make sure that Go 115 is on for Kubernetes 119. Cool. Any questions?
So would you say if like the rules were in place, which by the way, that is always the issue that I found, like not in this update, not even with the Go upgrade, but like every single time that I have to fix something, it's like, oh, the Bazel rules are not suitable yet for this specific thing that I want to do. But that said, would you say that if these rules were not a problem, would your job have been way easier this time?
Yeah, it was annoying. I poked at this for quite a few hours yesterday. No, not necessarily. I think that what we uncovered, so yes and no, I guess. If there were rules available for pre-releases, or if we knew exactly which ones to consume, that would be useful. The way it's been going for the last few updates, I have basically assumed that new rules were going to be there. Found the rules, updated repo infra, cut a new tag, targeted that new tag on Kubernetes, and then proceeded with the patch update. What we need to, I think what we need a better understanding of is what the process looks like when we're dealing with pre-releases, right? This is an opportunity to kind of like play whack-a-mole with some of the errors that we might see. And I think that overall, like, we're going to take some pain initially trying to figure out some of this stuff, but it will allow us to consume Go a lot faster if we're able to start consuming it closer to the edge, right? So.
Gotcha.
But yes, that is basically the thing that I've been told to find an update. It's probably rules go. It's maybe something in the tool chain updates. So when we do an update for pre-go release, we're going to make sure that the Bazel toolchain repo is up to date in our repositories, and then also making sure that the rules.go, rules_go is up to date. And then you do the dance that you do with all of the other Go related things. So kubecross, adding kubecross, promoting kubecross, adding kubecross to the PR, rebuilding the Kate's Cloud Builder image, setting up the Kubekins E2E images, and then starting to play whack-a-mole with the various issues that you run into on the Kubernetes PR for that. Once that merges, then handling the cherry picks for each of those things, merging.
Yeah, so that would be the same process that you already recorded, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. There are a few things to add, I guess, now that I understand more of the Bazel stuff, but it's fairly minor, I think. But maybe one day another recording for that too.
Well, like I'm transcribing some things, like also based on what you had and what Mark you had, and like putting them together somewhere.
Okay.
So we can add those Bazel things at some point.
Okay, sounds good. All right, so ETA on that is unknown at this point. Hopefully we have it ahead of the end of next week, or forward progress ahead of the end of this week, and hopefully closer to merge by the end of next week. So. Okay. All right, so Lori, I think you put this last one up. Do you want to talk about the action items?
Sure. So I'll share the link again so that you don't have to mess with the hosting credentials. But basically yesterday at the release team meeting, we talked about how we could track action items. And so I just spun up this spreadsheet to do just that. So if you click the link and take a look, it covers the to-dos that came up yesterday through the conversation. And then I've just added one, the item from Veronica actually just now. But that's planning to combine her notes and your videos into some materials around Go updates. But two things on this spreadsheet. So I don't want it to compete with the agenda notes because there's no sense in duplicating information. And also it shouldn't subsume the agenda. It's basically just to provide the quick view. What do we talk about? What we need to do? How do we find that easily? Who's doing what? Are there any blockers? Okay, here's, you know, the basic info. And then what would be the ETA for the items and any notes that aren't covered. So I'm wondering, I posted this in the Slack channel, like if this is helpful to people, if you all have feedback. My other note on this in the chat was that I had considered making a GitHub issue that would just be a checklist of things. But the spreadsheet for smart. Oh, music just started. My computer loves to prank me. But at least it was good music. But anyway, the advantage of a spreadsheet is that you just have more information fields, but maybe we don't need them all. Maybe we just need to have the to-do list, in which case a GitHub issue might be simple, an umbrella issue.
So I was going to say, let's do a GitHub issue, simply because like that's the way that most people work.
Mhm.
And the big upside of it is it allows us to directly link any related issues as well, right?
Mhm.
So if there is a separate GitHub issue per event or per subproject thing, then we can go from the meeting to that issue and go, all right, did we do the things? Did we not do the things? All right, are there more things to link? Cool. And do kind of weekly updates there, right? So we can break it into dates. I'll leave it to you to create those so that you have access to edit the descriptions as well. And then we can just do it by date and checklist.
Yeah. Okay. So, and I think we can use like apps. We can use people's handles to have the owners and the proposers.
Exactly.
And we can have bolded dates if there's a timeline for any of these items or urgency that we need to check up on the following meeting, like from one meeting to the next. To do it, we can have that information. So, all right, that makes sense.
Cool. Yeah, and so similar to the retrospective things that we had done, but like much shorter and I think completable.
Exactly. It's just like a to-do list with some of the basics.
Yeah, for sure.
All right.
Well, thank you. Or should we? I mean, another idea is we could have a project for it, right? And it could be separate GitHub issues, and we could burn down that project board at the beginning of a meeting.
Yeah, I mean, that was another consideration that I had. The question that came to mind was like, are these items too ephemeral?
Is it too far away, right? Is it like, it's not an aggregated list, right? So you don't have that same feel of completion, right?
It's ephemeral. However,
oh, we lost your voice.
I think it's the audio on my computer messing around again. Am I back?
Yeah, so you said however,
okay.
And then
so basically we could just have that issue stored in the project board and then it's always there. And then my question, actually I did have the question, like how the sub teams are managing their own project boards. Like release engineering has theirs, bug triage. Well, I guess some of the sub teams have their spreadsheets, but like, do we have a sense of the cadence of when the sub teams are actually going over some of those items?
So initially what we were doing is you'll note that we have not done a scrub for this meeting. But what we were doing is towards the end of the meeting, we would go through and walk the board a little bit. And that's kind of, that was kind of the intent. I think that we held off on that because these backlogs have gotten a bit ominous. And the hope is that now that we have Triage Party, we'll be able to jam on that a little faster. So it's I think it's less about new issues and more about making sure that we're turning the crank on the various PRs that are out for review. So I know that I have a few open from like Sasha and Carlos that have not been reviewed yet, and then also turning the crank on like older issues, right? So some of like the older issues probably from some of the collation that you've done, you know that some of the issues are kind of like these big blobs of problems, right? That are just like, this is a problem with the community, like, like storing Google images, like storing container images in Google, right? And they're just like multi-cycle efforts, right? That like occasionally get an update. And so getting better about turning around updates for those like large vacuous projects, and then driving down the time to response for the things that are active, right? For the way I work is kind of, if it's in front of me, I'll do it.
I think this is common.
Yeah, right. If I get, if it's a signal interrupt of some sort, like if I get a ping for it, an email for it, someone, knocks on my virtual door and says like, hey, we've got to look at this thing. That will get the highest priority outside of things that are already high priority. And I run my personal, so real quick, I'll do.
Oh, you were frozen.
The computer. That's cool.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. So what I'll usually do is I'll go to polls, and I'll hit polls first. And the way I work is, so we already know that there are the created ones, there is assigned, right? I will do assigned. I will sort by recently updated. And so the idea there being is that if it's more recently updated, it's likely that it's more important, or maybe, right?
Yeah, arguably, but
right.
you felt important to the recent time and then took an action.
Exactly. So I'll try to take an action on the most recent things first, right? Which of course means that like we have to review Sasha's update to this KEP, right? And then I'll hit. So this is like if you want to get in touch with me, right? Ways to do it. So I will review the things that I'm assigned to first. Things that I've been requested reviews on, those will take longer, but again, they will be sorted by updated, and I will churn through them that way. And then from there, maybe we get to mentioned, right? And mentioned is a lot hairier. Mentioned is actually not as bad for this overall. But then I'll go to issues. I'll kind of do the same thing. I'll hit assigned, and I will sort by recently updated.
Yeah.
Right. And this is, so like at any one time I have about 70 plus items in my assigned thing. And then mentioned, right? Mentioned again is much hairier. And I will try to do something like mentioned and not assigned and not the author or something like that, right? And then get a better idea of like what I have to look at next, right? Like the CI signal thing is, I need to give that some love. So yeah, that's my very vague, basic triage process. But that's how I do it on a personal level and not necessarily for the team. But yeah, we need to, I think the expectation moving forward, now that we have technical leads, I would expect the technical leads to handle more of the day-to-day, so that Tim and I can take more of the, so they're focusing on the tactical, where Tim and I can focus more on the strategy level, right? So understanding what those nebulous issues that we have open for years, what a project plan looks like for those, right? And turning those into chunkable tasks for the teams. And then things like running the day-to-day board, those would go to Jorge and Sasha for the various sub projects.
So what I see unfolding is once we actually have this looking at the old stuff session that we've been doodling about, then we'll have less noise and some notes around delegating certain items to certain parties to take up and own. And we may close some items as well. And then what that would leave would be a more refined set of tasks for the release team backlog, or and then onto some of the SIG release members who want to get more engaged as we head into a new cycle. Like some of those maybe process improvement oriented items that they might be able to take on because they're past release team members. And then that would be in all of the items that they might do would be in that project board, and we could walk that board every time that we meet in the SIG. And then also having the umbrella item, the umbrella issue for items that are specific and urgent around 119, we can store that in the same backlog. And just, we know that every meeting we ought to take a look at that because it's purposely urgent.
Purposely there.
For 119.
Yeah. So,
but
so
at least it will have a home and people will get familiar with it, and it'll be a lot easier to find in some spreadsheet among other spreadsheets.
So that's kind of the reason that we don't walk the board anymore. It's kind of predicated on one getting Jorge and Sasha in as technical aids, getting you in as a program manager to actually look at some of the stuff, and then taking the time to actually chunk up some of the better understand the backlog before we kind of throw people at like, here's this big thing. And yeah, so that was kind of the idea behind it. And I think we've got the team now. You've got the doodle up for that thing, so I've got to answer that doodle. But yes, yes, good things coming with prioritization. We are over time, everyone. So thank you for taking the time to hang out with us. I hope the meeting was informative and useful and all those good things. And I hope you have awesome days. I will catch you at one of the next release team meetings if you're there. And if not, for next week, the SIG release meeting. Take it easy.
Awesome. Thanks.